I have so many memories of Conway. Conway is one of the greatest singers I ever heard.
Some voices never leave you. And for Loretta Lynn, one of those voices belonged to Conway Twitty. "I have so many memories of Conway," she once whispered, the weight of those memories etched in every syllable. But Loretta didn't just collect memories, she remembered everything. Sharp as ever, honest to a fault, and fearless until her final days, Loretta Lynn didn't just sing country music, she rewrote it. From coal dust to spotlight, she climbed the ranks with no filter and no apologies, bearing her soul in songs that rattled Nashville long before it was ready. She called out cheating lovers, rival queens, and glossy pretenders. She didn't sugarcoat pain or play nice to fit in. Her music wasn't polished. It was powerful. Her stories were raw, often risky, and deeply human. And even as she entered her 90s, Loretta's fire hadn't dimmed. If anything, age only sharpened her clarity. And with that clarity came names, ones she had tucked away for decades. Names of artists who had either crossed a line or never quite earned her respect. Names that carried old feuds and unhealed wounds. First on that list, Tammy Wynette. For years, they were the faces of country music royalty. Gowns, perfect hair, chart-topping hits. On the surface, they looked like sisters in song. But behind the curtain, it was a different story. Their smiles on camera hid a rivalry colder than Appalachian stone. Tammy, with her tragic ballads and porcelain image, was the industry's darling. But Loretta saw it differently. To her, Tammy was polished but passive, a symbol of everything the industry wanted women to be: soft, vulnerable, and controlled. Loretta didn't play that game. She clawed her way out of Butcher Holler with grit under her fingernails and a voice that told the truth, even when it stung. That honesty set her apart, and set her against women like Tammy. There was one jab Loretta made that stuck for years. "I never needed a man to stand by me," she said, ice in her voice. "I told him to move." Everyone knew it was aimed at Tammy's biggest anthem. The message was clear. Loretta wasn't here to play backup in anyone's fantasy. Behind the scenes, producers begged for a duet album. 2 queens, 1 stage. It would have been gold. But Loretta always said no. "It'd be like oil and water," she once muttered to her manager. "We'd sell records, sure, but not survive rehearsals." What most fans never saw were the subtle digs, the sideways glances at award shows, and the tension that hummed like feedback backstage. They never recorded together, and that was no accident. Loretta later admitted to a close confidant, "She's all sugar on stage, but cold as snow behind it." The friction only deepened after one backstage moment in 1974. But then came Conway Twitty, the duet partner everyone adored. Fans couldn't get enough of their chemistry. Together, they gave the world hits like Louisiana Woman, Mississippi Man. On stage, they were flirtatious fire and smoky charm. But off stage? It was a minefield of bruised egos. Conway was the gentleman showman, slick, charming, and calculating. Loretta admired him, but she also watched how the industry talked about him. When they won awards, headlines called them his victories. He was the genius. She was just a great fit. Loretta wasn't having it. "They always praise the man first," she once grumbled, "even when he's following you." And maybe he was following, too closely. Whispers of something deeper swirled around their partnership. Nothing confirmed, but fans noticed the lingering touches, the glances that lingered just a beat too long. Loretta laughed it off. Her husband, Doolittle, didn't. He skipped shows when Conway was there, and tension crept into every green room and tour bus. As their success grew, Conway pushed for a cleaner, more commercial sound. Loretta pushed back. "He wanted pretty," she said once. "I wanted real." Their battles spilled into the studio. Conway started changing set lists without telling her, missing rehearsals, and stealing the spotlight during interviews meant for both. It all boiled over during a tour stop in Atlanta, 1979. Backstage, Conway made a casual remark to a young reporter. She still got it, for her age. It wasn't cruel, but to Loretta, it was a dagger. That night, when the curtain rose for her entrance, she didn't walk out. The band played on, the crowd roared, and Conway stood center stage, alone. And then came Olivia Newton-John. Sweet, angelic, and straight from Australia. She hit Nashville like a surprise storm. When she won the CMA's Female Vocalist of the Year in the mid-70s, jaws dropped, including Loretta's. To many, Olivia's win meant country music was evolving, expanding. To Loretta, it felt like betrayal. Olivia's voice was smooth, her look flawless. But her sound? As far as Loretta was concerned, it wasn't country. And yet, the industry rolled out the red carpet. Magazine covers, TV slots, endless applause. Loretta watched as Nashville welcomed a pop princess while turning its back on the women who'd bled for every note. The message wasn't subtle. Soften your sound, clean up your image, and maybe you'll be next. But Loretta didn't bend. Radio waves were saturated with Olivia's delicate vocals, and Nashville's red carpets welcomed her like royalty. Critics sang her praises, glossy magazines crowned her the future of country, and the industry cheered her arrival. But back at the ranch, Loretta Lynn wasn't clapping along. To her, country music wasn't sequins and spotlights. It was sweat, survival, and stories soaked in struggle. Olivia Newton-John, in Loretta's eyes, hadn't earned her place at the table. Loretta had carved her path through coal dust and cold mornings, and now she was watching a pop star, polished to perfection, being handed what she'd bled to build. She muttered once, almost to herself, "I shoveled ash." She strolled in with stage lights. It wasn't personal, at least not at first. It was symbolic. Olivia represented a shift, a slow erasure of the grit that gave country its soul. The genre was turning glossy, polished, more about crossover charts than backroad truths. And Loretta, who fought tooth and nail just to be heard, couldn't help but feel like she was watching something sacred slip away. She skipped one major CMA event entirely, citing a scheduling issue, but insiders whispered otherwise. She'd reportedly told her manager, "I won't cheer for rhinestones dressed as roots." Olivia, meanwhile, gave chipper interviews about bridging the gap between pop and country. Loretta had a different take. "We don't need bridges," she once said behind closed doors. "We need anchors." But even the glitzy invasion of her genre didn't leave a scar like the next betrayal. Because this time, the wound came from within her own family. Crystal Gale, her baby sister, the one with the floor-length hair and crystal-clear voice, was lighting up the charts with crossover hits and a refined image. While Loretta wore fringe and boots, Crystal shimmered in silk. And as her fame soared, so did the whispers. Is Crystal the new queen of country? The headlines teased. Loretta watched from the sidelines, feeling the sting, not of jealousy, but of being forgotten. Despite being blood, the sisters had always walked different paths. Loretta dug through the trenches, challenging every rule. Crystal glided through, her pop-leaning melodies a far cry from Loretta's Coal Town Confessions. When "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue" catapulted Crystal into superstardom, the industry buzzed. Loretta remained silent, but that silence spoke volumes. She didn't have to earn it the hard way, Loretta confided to a close friend. She started at the finish line. The tension grew over time, subtle, sharp, and cold. At family gatherings, moments passed stiffly. Eyes darted, but rarely met. But it wasn't until Crystal skipped a high-profile tribute for Loretta's 60th birthday that the damage truly set in. While legends lined up to pay homage, Crystal's absence screamed louder than any applause. Her team chalked it up to scheduling conflicts, but Loretta didn't buy it. She never mentioned it publicly, but she felt it in her bones. Then came the interview that ended it all. A simple TV special where the host asked Crystal what Loretta had meant to her career. "She was influential," Crystal said. "No warmth, no story. Just a word, flat and final." Loretta smiled through it, but she never agreed to another joint appearance again. Some heartbreaks don't come with loud exits. They slip in silently and never leave. Still, it wasn't the last name on her list. The one that perhaps cut deepest wasn't a sister or a rival or a polished outsider. It was a friend. Merle Haggard, the rebel, the poet, the outlaw who'd once seemed to truly understand her journey. They shared a bond born from the same dirt. Merle had known hunger, had wrestled with his demons, and wore his flaws like badges. That's what made Loretta trust him. That's why his betrayal wasn't just surprising. It was devastating. They'd toured together, laughed backstage, swapped stories late into the night. He was one of the few men in the industry who treated her as an equal, or so she thought. At a radio interview in the early 80s, Merle made a joke that landed like a gut punch. "Loretta's still milking the poor girl story. Coal mines and babies. What else is new?" The audience chuckled nervously. Loretta didn't. In that moment, she realized he didn't see her pain. He saw a punchline. Still, she tried to salvage the connection. She reached out with a duet idea, something stripped down, raw, aching with redemption. It wasn't a marketing ploy, it was her truth, turned into melody. Merle brushed it off, called it church stuff. "Too clean," he said. She was crushed. "He wants broken in his songs," she later told her band, "but he doesn't want to sing with someone who lived it." His refusal wasn't just professional, it was personal. He dismissed her scars like they were plot lines in a fiction novel. That dismissal dug deep. Even when she stayed composed in public, those moments stacked like stones. The glamour of country music often masks the weight of what's carried underneath. Loretta never responded with public feuds or flashy statements. Her responses came through her music. Lines laced with double meanings, melodies heavy with memory. People often wondered why she wrote the way she did, why her songs cut like they did. It's because every note was soaked in someone who'd underestimated her, dismissed her, or tried to soften her edges. And yet, through it all, she never stopped singing. She never stopped writing. She never stopped being the girl from Butcher Holler who refused to be rewritten. Even as others tried to polish country's rough edges, she leaned into them. Even as rivals smiled for cameras, she stood firm in truth. Her legacy wasn't just about platinum records. It was about standing tall while the world tried to bend her. That applause never really faded from Loretta's ears, whether it was meant for her or someone standing in her shadow. But as the cameras got brighter and the stages louder, it wasn't just the applause that echoed. It was the subtle sound of the doors closing behind her. Reba McEntire stormed onto the scene with flame-red hair, a voice polished to perfection, and every network ready to hand her the crown. But to Loretta, it wasn't admiration. It was alarm. Because Reba didn't just sing country. She represented its reinvention. The raw edges were sanded down. The heartbreaks felt rehearsed. It was like watching your favorite dive bar turn into a theme park. And the moment that set it all ablaze? A primetime awards show where Reba, in glittering sequins, performed one of Loretta's own ballads, note for note, smile for smile. But there was no nod, no shout-out, no tribute, just silence where legacy should have lived. Loretta sat front and center, unmoved, her face frozen in a storm of pride and pain. Backstage whispers told of Reba walking right by her. No eye contact, no handshake, no thanks. That kind of moment doesn't just hurt. It settles deep. And Loretta's answer? Not a word. Not a dig. Just a silence sharp enough to echo for years. That's when fans started noticing. Loretta didn't just have enemies. She had ghosts. And none haunted her more than the man she once called a brother, Johnny Cash. Not a rival, not a lover, but something more elusive, an emotional anchor. He was the one who sang from the same ache, who bled the same truths. They shared dressing rooms, tour buses, prayers whispered behind curtains. But one decision broke that bond. A gospel special, a shared stage, a meaningful invite, gone, 2 days before the cameras rolled. No explanation, no warning, just a quiet erasure. Loretta found out later. Cash had pulled the plug himself, said she was too bold for gospel, too political, too unapologetically herself. That betrayal didn't come with fireworks. It came with a hollow silence that rang louder than any headline. But behind the legend was a woman with layers. Wealthy, yes, but not careless. Loretta built her empire brick by brick. Her luxury came with meaning. Over the years, she quietly accumulated a vast real estate portfolio, ranches in Tennessee, a home near the Blue Ridge Mountains, and of course, the Graceland-esque Hurricane Mills estate. Her garage was no less iconic. A Cadillac Fleetwood, a Rolls-Royce gifted after a platinum record, and a jet-black Lincoln Continental. She called her tour tank. She favored Cartier watches, classic, understated, nothing too flashy. Her private jet, a sleek Cessna Citation, mostly used for business travel and medical appointments in later years. But it was her business sense that made her truly unstoppable. She co-owned publishing rights for over 200 songs, partnered with fashion brands, and launched a fragrance line that still sells quietly today. Her insurance policies were ironclad: estate protection, performance liability, even voice insurance. And her biggest financial lesson? Stay in control. Don't let anyone else write your checks or your history. Looking back, Loretta's story isn't just a catalog of hits or heartbreaks. It's a map of the battles she chose and the ones she walked away from. She never needed to outshine Reba or Crystal or Olivia. She only needed to outlast them. And in many ways, she did. Because even now, her songs live on like whispers in a storm. You hear them when you drive down a country road, when your heart breaks just a little, or when someone dares to sing the truth without softening the edges. The stage might have dimmed, but the fire never did. That's Loretta Lynn's true legacy. Not just the music, but the spirit. Fierce, wounded, unforgettable. A woman who never needed saving, just space to be heard. And now that her story has been told, we're left with one last question. Was it the songs that made her immortal, or the silence she left behind? Because in the end, Loretta didn't just write country music. She carved it into the walls of time. And some names? They don't fade. They echo.